If you are in the tabletop RPG hobby, I have no doubts that you have heard the announcement of the next edition of D&D, codenamed One D&D for now. There's an announcement trailer and a PDF file with some of the changes. But how is it related to GURPS? I think that the release of One D&D might affect the entire tabletop RPG hobby. I'm going to go on a rant to tell you about my concerns or maybe hopes. The trailer itself, for the lack of a better word, was very corporate. It seems as if the people were leaning heavily on three keywords: generation, accessibility and digital. They were saying how much they reach out to people to help them build their fantasy worlds, but the last 15 years or so show that they really don't. Even though I do not play D&D, I still read D&D books to find some inspiration or some content to convert to GURPS, but I have barely done anything from the 5th edition. With its tiny supplement library compared to AD&D or D&D 3.5, you would expect them to be full of quality content, but it's the other way around. It seems that they just take something old, familiar, then remove all fun and soul from it, print it, and they'll tell you that it's a new, improved version. The latest Spelljammer supplement is probably the best example of it. I thought that there could be nothing worse than the Strixhaven supplement that came out before, but I was mistaken. I don't know how they managed to make Spelljammer seem boring and soulless. I wasn't expecting anything good, but I still got disappointed. I always wondered what were Wizards of the Coast even doing if they were releasing only a minimal support for their flagship system. If One D&D was something they were developing all this time, my question remains unanswered. Even the name One D&D and how they were insisting in the trailer that they do not think of D&D as a system with editions anymore just feels like they are trying to erase everything that came before, even though they also said that they want to just build up on the old material. If constantly retconning the lore and making everything a bland, flavorless sludge is building up, then I think they got the definition wrong. For example, one of the rule changes was that NPCs cannot crit anymore, only PCs can. This is awful in my opinion, as that would remove a lot of tension. When there is no tension, no stakes, there is no fun. It was incredibly difficult to actually die in 5e anyway, and they want to make it even harder. I also really dislike when NPCs and PCs play by different roles, but that's just my personal distaste. There won't be any class spell lists anymore. There's going to be just Arcane, Divine, and Primal spells, which make spellcasting classes blend together even more. They also introduced a new race, Ardlings. Basically, now if you have a celestial ancestor, you will have an animal head, fur or feathers. Instead of, being an Azimar with actually appropriate traits. This race makes no sense to me as a generic celestial plain touch race. They could have tied it to the Hound Archons, Guardians, the Beastlands, the plane that is all about animals, including exalted animals, or even to the Pharaonic Pantheon. It feels that they just do not know their own lore that holds a lot of potential and just go for the most generic and bland option. I know that you can always homebrew things, but doesn't it feel a bit wrong that you have to intentionally go against the books instead of actually having good material that you can just use as is? It feels like the Wizards of the Coast are just trying hard to fight the actual consumers. Making an emphasis on the new generation of players, a new audience that is more used to the digital medium, might damage the entire hobby. I'm all in for accessibility, but if their D&D Beyond virtual tabletop will become the default way to play the game, as they want it to be, it will actually make the game less accessible and might affect other games as well. 3D interface and integrated mechanics that they have shown so far seem very video gamey. Even back in my day, new players have had trouble understanding the difference between a video game and a tabletop RPG, and this might make this problem even bigger. Video game-derived expectations will drain the creativity from the game. When you are using pen and paper, you can always come up with creative ways to interact with the environment, but what was shown in the trailer seemed closer to a video game battlefield. If they rely on integrated rule resolution mechanics, then I really doubt that any meaningful interaction will be possible outside of just moving and attacking. Well, it's not like D&D had good rule support for those anyway, but still. I very much prefer the flexibility of existing virtual tabletops, such as Foundry or even Roll20. Judging by existing Wizards of the Coast digital products such as MTG Arena, I can also assure you that it's going to be a buggy mess that breaks with every update in puzzling ways. I have no doubts that there is going to be some kind of a subscription system with assets, costumes, skins, and all that stuff as microtransactions, like in most video games nowadays. And to earn more money, Wizards of the Coast will probably not include any way to import your own 3D models into their VTT. They did mention a pre-built adventure that will be included with the platform, and yet again, this seems like a start for some kind of an adventure subscription. Imagine playing through an adventure, but then finding out that there's actually an additional side story, but it's only available as a DLC. And this is where the effect on the hobby in general comes from. New players who might enter the hobby through One D&D and their digital platform might not have a problem with their wallets being drained by a corporation, but they probably also will be reluctant to try anything else. Why would you go play GURPS or Shadowrun or something else on Foundry or Roll20 if you don't get a chance to use your beautiful mini that you bought on D&D Beyond? If they are going to sell supplements there, they might introduce a license for third-party authors that lets them sell their supplements only on D&D Beyond. This will not only hit hard such places as Drive-Thru RPG, but also damage other systems. While before, a new player could go to Drive-Thru RPG to look for a Pathfinder or D&D PDF, he would also have a chance to see what kind of books are being sold there for other systems, and maybe even try some of them out. If this becomes mainstream, new players might expect every other system to have the same features. Would such a player try out GURPS when SJ Games doesn't have its own digital platform with all the pretty features? Here's where my concerns flip around and I become hopeful. If this attempt to monopolize the market even further fails, it might become the last straw that breaks the camel's back. The camel in this case is the D&D player base, and maybe then they will be more open-minded and willing to try something else. When writing this script, I realized that I think I can be called a grognard now. If One D&D succeeds, it might cause a massive stagnation of the hobby, where the new players are attached to their D&D Beyond accounts and old players stay the same with a severely reduced influx of new players. If One D&D does not succeed, it might either create a new edition schism, like how Pathfinder split from 3.5e, or might just improve the hobby in general and make D&D players more receptive to trying non-mainstream systems. Other systems are not as inaccessible as they might seem. I think that even GURPS is relatively accessible, but I am trying to make it even more accessible with my videos. We'll just have to wait and see, this is just my initial knee-jerk reaction.